whispering fields. In the heart of the American countryside, nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of corn, lived a farmer named Jacob. Jacob was a hard-working man, known for his dedication to his land and his crops. He had inherited the farm from his father, who had inherited it from his father before him. The farm was Jacob's life, and he took great pride in it. One late autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Jacob noticed something strange. The wind had picked up, rustling the corn stalks in a way that sounded almost like whispers. He shrugged it off, attributing it to his tired mind playing tricks on him after a long day of work. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder and more distinct. They seemed to follow him wherever he went, echoing through the fields and around the farmhouse. At first, Jacob tried to ignore them, but the whispers became impossible to dismiss. They spoke in hushed tones, uttering words he couldn't quite understand, but their presence was undeniable. One night, unable to sleep, Jacob decided to investigate. Armed with a lantern and his trusty old shotgun, he ventured into the fields. The whispers seemed to guide him, leading him deeper into the corn. The further he went, the colder the air became, and the more oppressive the darkness felt. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. Jacob found himself in a small clearing, surrounded by towering corn stalks. In the center of the clearing stood a scarecrow, one he had never seen before. It was old and tattered, with a burlap sack for a head and straw protruding from its limbs. Its eyes, made of black buttons, seemed to glint in the lantern light, giving it an eerie, lifelike appearance. Jacob felt a chill run down his spine as he approached the scarecrow. The air around him grew colder, and he could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him. He reached out to touch the scarecrow, but as his fingers brushed against the rough burlap, the whispers returned, louder and more urgent than ever. "Leave this place," they seemed to say. "You are not welcome here." Jacob stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to run, but the corn stalks seemed to close in around him, trapping him in the clearing. The whispers grew deafening, filling his mind with a cacophony of voices. Desperate, Jacob raised his shotgun and fired at the scarecrow. The blast echoed through the night, and for a moment there was silence. Then, the scarecrow began to move. Its limbs creaked and groaned as it stepped down from its post, its button eyes fixed on Jacob. The whispers turned into a roar, and Jacob felt a cold hand grip his shoulder. Jacob's heart raced as the scarecrow took a step towards him. He could see the straw shifting beneath the burlap, as if it were alive. The whispers now formed coherent words, repeating a single, chilling phrase: "You should not have come." In a panic, Jacob turned and ran, pushing through the dense corn stalks. The whispers followed him, growing louder with each step. He could hear the scarecrow's footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate, as if it knew he had nowhere to go. Jacob burst out of the cornfield and sprinted towards his farmhouse. He slammed the door shut behind him and bolted it, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers were muffled now, but he could still hear them, a constant reminder of the terror lurking outside. He grabbed his phone and dialed the local sheriff, but the line was dead. Desperation clawed at him as he realized he was completely alone. The farmhouse, once a place of comfort and safety, now felt like a prison. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. The silence was deafening, and Jacob strained to hear any sound. Then a soft tapping came from the window. He turned slowly, his eyes wide with fear. The scarecrow stood outside, its button eyes staring directly at him. It raised a straw-filled hand and tapped on the glass again, the sound echoing through the silent house. Jacob backed away, his mind racing. He needed to find a way out, but every exit seemed blocked. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, filling his head with their eerie chant. He clutched his head, trying to block them out, but they only grew louder. In a moment of clarity, Jacob remembered the old root cellar beneath the house. It had a hidden entrance in the kitchen, a place he could hide until morning. He stumbled towards the kitchen, the whispers now a deafening roar. He found the trapdoor and pulled it open, descending into the darkness below. The cellar was cold and damp, but it offered a temporary refuge. Jacob sat in the corner, his back against the wall, and tried to calm his racing heart. The whispers were faint now, barely audible, but they were still there, a constant reminder of the terror outside. As he sat in the darkness, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. He could hear faint rustling sounds, as if something was moving in the shadows. He held his breath, straining to see in the dim light. Then he saw it, a pair of glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness. Jacob's breath caught in his throat as he stared into the glowing eyes. They were unblinking, fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. He fumbled for his lantern, his hands shaking, and managed to light it. The dim glow revealed a small, shadowy figure crouched in the corner of the cellar. It was a child, or at least it looked like one. Its skin was pale and gaunt, stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, seemed to pierce through Jacob. The whispers returned, now coming from the child's direction, filling the cellar with their eerie chant. "Help me," the child whispered, its voice a haunting echo of the whispers Jacob had heard in the fields. "Please, help me." Jacob's fear was momentarily replaced by a surge of compassion. He took a cautious step forward, holding the lantern high. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" The child didn't answer. Instead, it pointed towards the trapdoor, its eyes never leaving Jacob's. "They're coming," it said, its voice barely audible over the whispers. "You have to stop them." Jacob's mind raced. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew he couldn't stay in the cellar. He had to find a way to protect himself and his farm. He turned towards the trapdoor, but before he could move, the child grabbed his arm. "Wait," it said, its grip surprisingly strong. "You need to know the truth." Jacob looked into the child's eyes, and for a moment he saw something familiar. A memory, long buried, surfaced in his mind. He remembered his father telling him stories about the farm, stories of strange occurrences and unexplained events. He had always dismissed them as old wives' tales, but now he wasn't so sure. "What truth?" Jacob asked, his voice barely a whisper. The child released his arm and stepped back, its eyes glowing brighter. "This land is cursed," it said. "The scarecrow is a guardian, but it has been corrupted. You must find the source of the curse and destroy it, or it will consume everything." Jacob's mind reeled. A curse? A corrupted guardian? It sounded like something out of a nightmare, but he couldn't deny the evidence before him. He took a deep breath and nodded. "How do I find the source?" he asked. The child pointed towards the far end of the cellar. "There is a hidden passage," it said. "It will lead you to the heart of the curse. Be careful and trust no one." Jacob nodded and turned towards the passage. He could feel the weight of the child's gaze on his back as he moved forward. The whispers grew louder, urging him on. He knew he had to act quickly, before the curse claimed him and his farm. Jacob moved cautiously towards the far end of the cellar, his lantern casting long, flickering shadows on the damp walls. He found a small, hidden door, almost invisible in the dim light. With a deep breath, he pushed it open and stepped into the darkness beyond. The passage was narrow and winding, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. The whispers seemed to guide him, growing louder and more insistent with each step. He could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on him, a palpable force that made it difficult to breathe. After what felt like an eternity, Jacob emerged into a large underground chamber. The walls were lined with ancient, crumbling stone, and the air was filled with a faint, eerie glow. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, covered in strange symbols and surrounded by flickering candles. On the altar lay a book, its pages yellowed with age and covered in strange, arcane writing. Jacob approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the power emanating from the book, a dark and malevolent force that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As he reached out to touch the book, the whispers grew deafening, filling his mind with their insistent chant. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the ancient pages. He knew that whatever he did next would determine the fate of his farm and possibly his own life. With a deep breath, Jacob opened the book. The pages seemed to come alive, the writing shifting and changing before his eyes. He could feel the curse's power surging through him, a dark and terrible force that threatened to consume him. But Jacob was determined. He focused on the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. Slowly, the whispers began to form coherent words, guiding him through the ancient incantations. He could feel the curse's grip loosening, the oppressive weight lifting from his shoulders. Just as he was about to complete the final incantation, a cold hand gripped his shoulder. He turned to see the scarecrow standing behind him, its button eyes glowing with an unholy light. The whispers turned into a roar, and Jacob felt the darkness closing in around him. Jacob's heart pounded as the scarecrow's cold grip tightened on his shoulder. The whispers roared in his ears, threatening to overwhelm him. But he knew he couldn't give up now. With a surge of determination, he focused on the final incantation, chanting the ancient words with all his strength. The scarecrow's grip loosened, and Jacob felt the dark power of the curse begin to wane. The whispers grew fainter, their malevolent force dissipating. The scarecrow let out a guttural scream, its button eyes flickering before going dark. It collapsed to the ground, lifeless and still. Jacob finished the incantation, and a wave of relief washed over him. The oppressive weight of the curse lifted, and the chamber was filled with a warm, golden light. The ancient symbols on the altar glowed brightly, then faded away, leaving the book blank and harmless. Exhausted but victorious, Jacob made his way back through the passage and up into the cellar. The child was gone, but he could feel a sense of peace in the air. The whispers were silent, and the farmhouse felt safe once more. As dawn broke over the horizon, Jacob stepped outside and looked over his fields. The corn rustled gently in the breeze, no longer whispering dark secrets. He knew that the curse had been lifted, and his farm was finally free. Jacob took a deep breath, savoring the fresh morning air. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The farm, his legacy, was safe. And as he stood there, bathed in the golden light of the rising sun, he knew that he would never forget the night he faced the whispers in the fields. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you have any other requests or need assistance with anything else, feel free to let me know.